We are now live.
Okay, is Donna going to join us?
I'm here, Ed. I'm in council.
Oh, you're in the
chamber.
office. There you are. Perfect.
Yeah.
All present and accounted for. Fantastic. All right then, it is 1:04 and I will call the meeting to order. I would next ask people to take a look at the agenda, and if there are no additions, I would seek a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I would move it.
Thank
Second.
you.
Second.
Thank you, Tom. So moved by Councillor Martin, second by Warden Marks, that the agenda be approved and presented. All in favor?
Aye.
I think that's carried then. Thank you. Next is the adoption of the minutes. Hopefully everyone has had opportunity to peruse the minutes, and they were back from, I believe, August 31st. And if there are no errors or omissions, I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll move the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Jaguar. Seconder? Warden Marks. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
And that is carried as well. I would remind everyone of disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. I don't see any. So we'll move on with point number 5, which is discussion paper number
Might have
4,
one.
housing and affordability, the manager of planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the committee, I am presenting this report in the absence of Manager of Planning, who is off today. Before you is discussion paper number 4, which focuses on housing and affordability. The discussion paper looks at provincial and local policies that refer to affordable housing and what policies and tools have been implemented in surrounding municipalities. As it pertains to the county's existing official plan policies, the county currently requires a 20-year supply of land for residential development with sufficient servicing capacity, whereas the provincial policy statement requires a minimum of 15-year supply. The county's official plan also contains policies related specifically to affordable housing with minimum targets of 20% stock provision and a consistent definition of affordable with that of the provincial policy statement. In 2013 and 2018, respectively, the Housing and Homelessness Needs Assessment for St. Thomas and Elgin County and the long-term St. Thomas Elgin Affordable and Social Housing Strategy were developed. Both reports offered several land use planning recommendations that aim to increase affordable housing supply to meet the project demand and preserve the existing supply of social and supportive housing. Just recently, the Housing and Homelessness Needs Assessment Report was commissioned to better understand the needs of housing and homelessness in the rural municipalities of the county. Several policy recommendations are noted in the discussion paper before you. The discussion paper then reviews and notes the policies related to housing and affordability of adjacent municipalities. The discussion paper also details a range of potential planning and financial incentives that could be implemented via policies to encourage the creation of affordable housing, such as permitting secondary dwelling units or within accessory buildings. If implemented, such policy change would require LMPs to amend their municipal official plans and zoning bylaws to permit such, and to identify appropriate areas for second units within both existing and new developments. Further, the Planning Act also gives municipalities the ability to prepare community improvement plans intended to encourage revitalization initiatives and or stimulate development and redevelopment, and allows municipalities to provide tax assistance, grants, or loans to assist in such effort within the plan area. Municipalities can also establish a demolition control area to refuse the issuance of a demolition permit unless a building permit has been issued to create a new building on the site. Permitting mixed-use developments which promote housing diversity and more compact walkable communities is also a recommendation, or rather another option. To support this, local zoning To support this, local zoning bylaws and development standards may need to be amended. Finally, the county and LMPs may want to consider specifying a higher percentage of affordable housing per development for inclusion in local and county OP. With that, I'll do my best to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report, Brian. Any questions regarding the report? Yes, Dominique first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It should be an easy question. I'm just wondering, so recently many of us attended the housing forum, and during that meeting, there were several really good presentations that were fairly comprehensive, even like without the benefit of the presenter. So I'm wondering if it would be useful and possible to add links, perhaps, in the discussion paper to say for additional, because there was good data, there was good different examples of policies from the consultant, which would help with some of the reflection questions. That would be a suggestion / question.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, certainly we can look to include that and enhance the discussion paper as it currently exists with some of the additional input, for sure.
Great. And perhaps even on the website itself, like on the page where you have this paper, so it's not just kind of hidden in the discussion paper, but could be like right there on the page, because they were excellent presentations.
Good suggestion, certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. Sally, you had a comment or a question?
I know we at Central Ogden have been implementing far more mixed use and with apartment buildings and row houses and townhouses and such in our developments, but it really is in the rural areas too. It can only, obviously you can only do those in serviced areas. So that limits us as well. So I mean, it limits the county is what I meant, because you have to have servicing if you're going to have an apartment building to get the pressure, et cetera. So, and the capacity. So I think this is a very important issue. And I know we have had a task force committee working on it and with suggestions and ideas. And I know we had Tim Welsh do a study for us. He was one of the presenters at the forum that Dominique talked about. With recommendations and tax incentives and development charges delayed. And I know the province have delayed those. So this is important. And I think somehow it's got to be more than just talk. And I'm not certain exactly how we can do more than just talk about it.
Thank you for your comments. I think just to throw in my 2 cents from a housing mix perspective, that if you're only limiting development to infilling, you're not going to get that kind of housing mix. You need to have the larger developments to encourage somebody to put in those, whether it's row housing or duplexes or smaller apartment systems, and that puts the argument forward for larger plans of subdivision. Sally, you made the point also that for apartment style housing, you need to have said larger water services. Well, I tend to agree, but I think there are other options as well. Perhaps communal servicing, something though that guarantees that there is that kind of pressure to meet the needs. And I think there are other options out there. So by saying that you can only restrict it to full servicing, well, I don't know if I agree with that one, but it's something that I think the science should speak to.
And Ed, I wasn't saying necessarily it had to be restricted to that, but it certainly is a lot easier in a full serviced area to implement that. And it also helps pay for the servicing when you do that, because you only need one connection for the whole apartment building. And
yes.
It spreads the cost of both the sewage and the water out over, far more people that are paying for the service. The other concern that I have with this, and I think it's very important that, and we've talked about this at Central Ogden, that we don't expect a whole building that is an affordable housing thing. because that ostracizes the people. That it should be intermittent apartments within the building, that they're just developed with not all the costly add-ons that many of the developers use now.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. Even if you held to the county model or something that, say, 20% of those units needed to be, as you say, affordable. Something along that line.
That's a good idea, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Donna, you got your hand up?
I do. I just wanted to say that as far from an agricultural perspective, that we would certainly agree with the increased density in the villages and in the towns. Certainly, it makes for much more friendly hubs of enterprise. It creates the walkable neighborhoods. It really creates what you're talking about of walking, living, and playing in your community. And we see that the seniors and the new entrants, maybe younger families, have a harder time of entering into the housing market because of right now, there's such a tendency for large lot, single home dwellings that it makes it very difficult. Even in the town of Belmont, it's very difficult for any seniors or new entrants to be involved in a housing market there. And so we see this as stopping the sprawl as well into agricultural land, more severancing and large lots, and creating our vibrant rural communities. So this is something we would really like to see.
If I can summarize, Donna, you're suggesting intensify within existing boundary limits.
That would be a very good place to start.
Yep, okay, thank you. Tom?
If I could add, so many of the services like our social clubs or service clubs, like our little variety stores or pizza shops and grocery stores, there's another reason for the school bus to go down the road, your 4-H clubs. They're just a lack of members. And the hockey, if they have enough to have a full team, I was at a rural task force meeting last night, and there's that isolation out in the country. So if you can do it in a planned way, it just helps those. The churches, there's just another reason to stay open, and they need it desperately.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so far from what I understand, I understand there's been a request for one amendment. Have I missed something there, or are we good on that? I'm seeing heads nod. Okay.
I think one other thing, Ed, perhaps, is that we should mention about the garden suites, certainly in the agricultural and more rural areas, that would also be an option, is having the garden suites either for families that are coming home or for the seniors, or to be able to keep the population there, but still within an affordable unit and not creating more land to have to be built on.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, Donna. In fact, and I assume many of us, and I'm meaning the lower local municipal partners, have provisions in their OPs supporting garden suites. We have them. The interesting thing about garden suites are they're temporary in nature.
Yes.
Whereas secondary dwellings units, which the province is advocating for in existing residential, is also, I think, something that's inclusive within what you're describing. So, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, we've been implementing in Central Elgin a lot of secondary units, which are more permanent, as you say, rather than the garden suites, because they have to come back for renewal every so often if they're going to stay. But the secondary units that the province advocated, we amended our official plan to include them already.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, Mr. Chair, that recommendation is in the paper for consideration, I believe, around page 21, so that's good.
The only issue we have had, I will say, is in Port Stanley, we've had a lot of secondary units applied for and been granted. The problem is they end up being Airbnbs or Airbnbs instead of secondary unit dwellings for year-round occupancy, so it doesn't help with the affordable housing. And we have found it very difficult to figure out how to change that or fix that.
Yeah, I can recognize that. I'm wondering, is there something that can be included within this OP review that might address that kind of use? Because, and I'm not sure on how Airbnbs are currently zoned or requirements for zoning on them. Is there something in there to control them a little better? Like, are there even licensing provisions for them? And I don't know.
Yeah, you can institute a licensing bylaw. There are some municipalities out there that have licensing bylaws that we have looked at. It's just our council have chosen not to institute it because it will take extra staff to do it.
Sure.
But that is the one way you can control them, is with a licensing bylaw, so that, you know, if they have to be licensed in order to have a secondary unit that is an Airbnb, et cetera.
Okay, is that something from, and I'm going to ask staff, is that something that is dealt with through the official plan, or is that through, one of the other building mechanisms out there?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, based on my limited experience with other municipalities having done so, typically that is dealt with through enforcement staff, done that way. So similar, building upon Sally's comments, bylaws would be implemented and it would be enforced that way. But staff is happy to bring back a report to the committee if they wish.
Well, okay, well, I guess what I'm looking for is a little clarification on is it something that needs to be included within the OP addressing Airbnbs? That's what I'm asking.
I would say, Mr. Chair, would be a standalone topic of the discussion, and it'd probably be excluded from the OP.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. All right, thank you. Is there anything else that the committee wants to discuss about this discussion paper number 4?
Just one thought, Ed, and I don't know if Brian can help out with this or not, but certainly the affordability aspect. I know that with, as an example, the women that are in second stage housing, and they have to look for permanent housing within 12 months. There, of course, is such a shortage, it's very difficult to get the housing. But the other question is the first and last month's rent, and it's so expensive that there is a real difficulty. So if there's any municipal services that could help with that, I'm not sure how that could be addressed. But they also need to be close to schools, close to social services, and hopefully close to employment. So it has to be in a hub. And I'm just wondering how that can be addressed, that we could have our vulnerable population back in our communities, but it has to be affordable and accessible.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, there's a lot to unpack there with respect to a series of items there. Certainly, the importance of the matter being affordable housing, so working with the development community to make a housing product affordable to potential end buyers is critically important, and through the course of the OP, implementing policies and possibly identifying incentives to make that possible is one of the most important mechanisms. Secondary to that, there's on further discussion or some discussion with social housing folks at the City of St. Thomas, may be in a better position to assist on some of those other more social components associated with your inquiries. So certainly with the OP, every effort in terms of implementing policies or identifying policies and making potentially available incentives to realize a greater affordable housing stock is the main goal of the official plan review.
Hi, Tom, you're so far away down there.
I had, memory serves me right from our forum, was there not a suggestion that we do maybe an inventory of available land? There's a lot of examples around our communities where our service clubs, whether it be the Kiwanis, church groups, the Lions, et cetera, if they have the land, they can apply for various funding things, and they've done tremendous work. You just drive around and they're there, and we just need to multiply that. But they need that land, and I don't think most of us have that. But if we do that inventory, like I've often kind of tongue-in-cheek looked across the road at the old site grounds. There's a lot of grass growing over there that if we could talk the province into giving it to us and then translated that into some of our service clubs, we'd have an awful lot of good housing over there, but we need that land. So maybe we need to pursue something like that.
Are you suggesting an inventory available at the county?
I do not believe the county has much land, if any.
No, not the county, but are you suggesting like the LMPs would provide the county with an inventory of available lots?
Exactly.
Which is something, yeah, which is something I think that is already or has already taken place. I know that BAM has provided that, and I think they were providing employment land inventory as well.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may step in, county staff, it will be bringing forth a report at County Council's next meeting detailing vacant land inventory across the entire county. So broken down by residential and the ICI sector as well.
Yep, I thought so, but good to know. Does that address what you're looking for, Tom?
Yes.
Okay.
Just one comment, Ed,
Mhm.
if I may. What Tom's suggestion, I've been looking at that for the last 4 years about trying to get the province to work with us. They insisted on designating the buildings across the road at the psych hospital so that they can't be torn down, the front buildings, not the back wards, but all the front buildings. They've also got an easement agreement such that you can't build on the front lawns, et cetera, that has to stay green and grass. And we had a chance to work with Indwell, who's a registered charity that does affordable or social housing. And they were willing to put in seniors housing, student housing, social housing, et cetera. And we were asking the province if they, for $1 would donate the buildings at the front and the land, because they want those preserved. Indwell would do the work, and they would still have 400 acres to sell as a province, which I can't imagine too many developers are going to want the front buildings. But anyway, the province, we didn't get anywhere. We tried. So I still would like to see that worked on at some point, because to me, it's a very strong structure, well built, and could easily be used because it has cafeterias, an auditorium, chapel, libraries, gymnasium, and big kitchens. It has everything that you would need to create a whole community over there, and provide lots of park space as well. So it'd be a great place for housing.
Okay. Okay, any additional thoughts for with respect to the discussion paper? Okay, are we, as a committee, then ready to move this on? And if that's the case, there is a proposed motion that reads, be it resolved that the discussion paper be approved as amended, that it be circulated to the local municipal partners for their review and consideration, that feedback be gathered from the public and other stakeholder groups, and that this feedback be shared with the committee and council to help determine preferred options to encourage the creation of affordable housing. If that's acceptable to people, I would entertain a mover and a seconder for that.
Happy to move it.
Thank you, Sally.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dominique. All in favor?
Aye.
I think that's carried. Okay, jumping down then to section 6, community grant program final report summary. It looks like that's Catherine's.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The recommendations for this report are that the report be received and filed for information, and that the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee provide direction on the eligibility of organizations for the 2022 Community Grant Program based on the submitted final reports. Organizations who received funding through the county in 2021 are required to provide a final report regarding how the funds were spent and evaluating the program or event's successes. These reports are due either 60 days after the completion of the program or event, or by November 1st of each calendar year. Organizations who do not submit a final report but received funding are ineligible to receive funding in subsequent years. It is important to note that over the course of 2021, restrictions on events and programs as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic were constantly changing, and they provided a moving target for events and program organizers. These challenges caused organizations to have to change direction in order to comply with provincial restrictions at the time and to ensure public health safety protocols were followed. Due to the continued challenges presented, some events were canceled entirely and others were required to deviate from their originally planned programming. As a result of this, in July of 2021, the committee requested staff reach out to organizations who received funding to determine the progress of their programs and events. On August 31st, 2021, the committee received an interim report which acted as notice of modification of many of these programs and events. The committee indicated at the time that they would determine the eligibility for 2022 grants based on the final reports received in November. Final reports were attached to the agenda and they are summarized in this report. Many of the organizations had their programs go ahead as planned, or they were modified slightly to change the date. There were others that were required to modify their programs significantly, and a few events did cancel and returned funds to the County of Elgin. For example, Calypso Port Stanley were not required to do a final report because they canceled their event and returned the funds. And the same with the Elgin Middlesex VON Seniors Day in the Park. They do not require a final report as they returned their funds as well and canceled the event. So I am happy to answer any questions that the committee may have based on these final reports, and look forward to direction. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Catherine. Does anyone have any questions regarding, the final reports? Recognize them, of course, it was an extraordinary year and a lot of dynamics taking place with respect to their various events. Is everyone satisfied with the reports? But before I open it up for that, I need to ask staff, did you have any inquiries or concerns from any of the program participants about the difficulty of filling out this final report?
We did not.
Okay. Just wanted to check, see how they viewed it as being too onerous or not. And if there were no comments, then that would suggest to me that they seemed to acquiesce quite well. Okay, any comments then on the final report? Is the committee satisfied that it's met your criteria? Yes, Dominique.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think the reporting structure is great. It does provide all the information that we need as a committee to provide back to the public the transparency on how funds are being used. I think it also provides insights on where we may need to provide further clarification, at least for ourselves as a committee, as to what we wish to define as eligible expenses. And so I know, like, right now, the categories are fairly broad in terms of, you know, like, I think we say that operational expenses are not eligible. But as I was reading those reports, my observation is that perhaps the definition of operational expenses is very broad. And where some things I thought was operational was perhaps interpreted by one organization as being more program related. And so, yeah, I mean, nothing that I would suggest would affect, you know, anything retroactively. But I think part of the motion is also to, and the recommendation today is also to look at, you know, any impact or changes on 2022. And yeah, I'm wondering if that's one area we could discuss. I'll share as an example of what tweaked this thought was significant expenses around advertising, for example, for, you know, perhaps what could be considered a fairly small event with a lot of funds, our funds going through for advertising. And in other examples were our funds being used almost strictly for prize money, which I know for other organizations when there are prizes, often prizes are gathered from the business community through sponsors, and I was trying to put myself in the shoes of our, you know, constituents who contributed to that, and is that something they would support as, you know, that for an event, the county funds were used, you know, to provide prize money. And I myself have not come with an actual answer, but to me that just says that perhaps it warrant discussions and further clarification around this table.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I would add to that, at the time of the applicants, when I reviewed them last year, there were a couple that I thought, in my own mind, didn't meet the criteria, viewing it more as a capital investment rather than operational, or not operational, but as a program expense. And I know that the committee chose to support them anyway, but I know what you're getting at in terms of defining what is appropriate and what's not. And in my mind, I think the intention is always that these grant monies are to support the program, but not necessarily the requirements or expenditure of running the organization. Is that a fairly broad definition, and does that seem agreeable to you?
I'm interested in other opinions, because I could argue both ways, like running something. So is advertising or, you know, a prize that you give to an event participant, is that the cost of running the program, or is that operating? And so do we want to strictly use operating or operational expenses as, I think we have listed staff, like wages and benefits? And I think very few of our applicants actually have staff. So that's almost by default saying pretty much all of their expenses could
Yeah.
apply.
What about accounting fees? Would you consider that a program fee or as an organizational fee? And I'm thinking that's more of an organizational expense fee.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Okay, so, you know, it is a little tricky to navigate. You're right. So
I think
I think
Catherine had her
yeah.
hand up, sorry.
I do. Mr. Chair, if I may, I wonder if it would be helpful to make sure that the cost is a direct result of the program or event. So for example, advertising would need to be directly tied to promoting that program or that event, as opposed to general advertising for the organization. It is difficult because we do say that professional fees are an eligible expense. So in terms of an accounting fee, I guess it would depend if that was an accounting fee just for that particular event, or if it was for the entire organization. So I think perhaps that would be a way we maybe could clarify in the future that those expenses would need to be directly related to that event.
I would agree with Catherine's suggestions,
Yep.
that makes good sense to clarify that.
Yep.
Donna has her hand.
Donna?
Because I do a lot of grant writing, I think that there's a bit of a definition maybe we could further define. And that is it program or is it project? So a program you would be running anyway is also operational. But if you were to create a project, then that project would be eligible for new funding and all of the expenses that were eligible under the project, so that some of the accounting for that project or event, as you say. But when you use the word program, it's the entire program. And so you're still, now you are funding, what I read in here, what I see is that we're funding the operational program of these organizations. And that if they were applying for a project or an event, that could be within their program or supplement to, then it would be a little more separated and you could see the expenses separated with the project or the event that you're applying for, rather than applying for the program. Because the
Right.
program to me is still the entire program of the organization.
Ed, could I speak?
Yes, please.
The only thing I would say is that we have some little ones like that seniors picnic in the park. The whole program is, they're looking for the grant because that's all they do. It's not like they're an organization that do other things. They're just trying to hold something for seniors. And the same, to me, the 4-H program, we've said before that we wanted to give the 4-H their money. We want to give the seniors in the park. Now, I know they've asked for more this year, but we wanted to give them the money. We've given the Plowman's Association, and we haven't cut back on any of those. But the others, I can understand large groups that have several programs going on and they're applying for something specific. But for some of those smaller ones, to me, their program is the whole project.
Yeah, no, very good point. Very good
Yeah.
point, but I think, speaking again to Donna, your point of defining what the project is within the program, and it's splitting hairs perhaps, but I think it meets with what the intent of this, forgive me for saying program is all about, to fund those projects. Yeah, Tom.
Ed, I don't want to be seen as a grumpy old guy here, and I probably am. I was actually
Zoom out then.
I was called a fiscal conservative not too long ago. I kind of chuckled at that, but to Dominique's point of the public's perception of this, and I hesitate if we go back for further study, because I think if it's a fair statement, we're giving money away and it's costing us money to do it. That perception bothers me as a personal taxpayer. I get the value of doing these things, and to Sally's point, if we got the tried and proved ones, $400 for 4-H every year, let's not spend a lot of time on it, reinventing the wheel. They're tried and proven, but again, I just caution us, we spend more time on this than we do the major expansions we do and spending money on fire trucks and et cetera. And if we're viewed as spending public money to give money away, that bothers me. The grumpy
Thank
guy-
you.
Grumpy old guy will be quiet.
No, keep voicing your opinions.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, because I agree we need to make sure the administration is as streamlined as possible. And that includes like trying to define what's eligible and not eligible. And part of my thinking was also to go to do a complete 180 and just if we support what you do, whether it's an event or a program, if what you do as an organization or as an event is aligned with the needs of the community, spend the money the way you see fit and almost like eliminate that separation of this is allowed, this is not allowed. I think it could make it just easier for us and even easier for the applicants. Because I tried to use the argument the other way. It's like, what would be something that would be completely unacceptable? Is there really anything that would be unacceptable? At the end of the day, perhaps not, because what I was reacting to was I realized I was trying to put things in boxes of operational versus programming. And I thought, you know what? Maybe we take that out for future applications. And as a grant applicant, Donna, I'm sure that you would appreciate that, because is there a type of expense that would really be so offensive and unacceptable?
I think that, and you bring up a really good point, because you have to be able to react through the year when something happens and be fluid enough. And if you agree with the organization itself to fund it. And so many of the grants now that are being written are not so much looking at the financials as much as they are, what is the impact and outcome based? So if the impact of that program or project, whatever, is what you desire to fund, maybe that's what you need to be spending your time on, is if it's impactful, that and fits in with your strategic vision, then let staff worry about how the other works out.
Yeah. So that would be my recommendation, Mr. Chair, is that for a future application, we could consider removing either at the time of application or at the time of reporting, the actual sort of eligible expenses, ineligible expenses. And that if we support your outcome, if we see that your outcome is aligned with our needs in the county, we support you and we trust you that you will spend it well, as you see fit.
Ed?
Yes,
It's,
please.
Only one comment I would make is, we've always said it can't be on capital, that's all. That we don't want them,
Sure.
building a building, that's part of the program or something, like major capital expenses should not be involved in the grant. The grant is for the program. I would agree with the other, let's streamline it as best we can to make this easy for staff. I mean, the three of us or the four of us on this committee received no money specifically to do this, so, but it does take staff time because they're sitting in on the meetings, et cetera, and we're giving them jobs to do. So, but I do think the grant program, I know Tom and I've differed on this for years, but I do believe it's very important that we support, and I really am glad to see even a new one on elder abuse coming in this time, et cetera. So I think there are very worthwhile programs out there that we need to help.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the idea or notion of finding a mechanism to support and further the goals of the county, okay, or the outcomes, as you say. I'm still unsure of removing, say, controls on what we would consider eligible or even eligible expenditures. Let's just say I'm not interested in growing an organization. I really don't care. I'm interested in the outcomes to see that if it's something positive for the community and that's something that's received. But at the same time, we're talking about investing tax dollars into an event, shall we call it, or whatever you want to call it. But I'm just not interested in just throwing dollars out there for the sake that we can. And I don't think you're suggesting that. I'm just trying to figure out, how do we safeguard so that it's a safe investment? Or do we need to? Maybe that's the question. I think fundamentally we do, but
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, I think the fact that we still have an application process, a reporting, process that provides transparency, I think that's a lot of safeguards right there. So, but that could be sufficient, and perhaps we just leave the capital item in. The other thing is we do have time to perhaps for the committee to just think about it, because that would be for next year, right? That where we would remove at the time of reporting and at the time of applying. So we could always make the final decision and see how the process goes. Again, this is going to be just our second year, I think, in this format. So we have
I
time.
agree. Yeah, what we're talking about is for 2023,
Correct.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. I think, again, and I have not looked at this year's applications to find out what's in there, what's not yet. Thought I needed something for the weekend to do. But, what I'm getting at is, and I agree with the notion that I don't think it's something that we want to be necessarily investing in pavilions and things like that, or buying 2x4s. You know what I'm getting at. I think, I'm not sure how that, advances the aims of the county, but, so anyway. Any other thoughts?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
perhaps because we do have time, staff could investigate what other municipalities are doing. I've done a bit of a very quick, brief investigation, but we could look at other counties and other municipalities to see what types of criteria exist there, and perhaps we could refine our eligibility criteria, remove it, add more, add less for the 2023 process.
I'd look forward to a report on that, say, down the road a piece. When you have breathing room.
Spare time.
That's right. Okay, I think what staff are looking for is, are you satisfied with the reports that came in this last year to determine the eligibility of these organizations moving forward? If that's the case, then I think we're ready to move on with this topic. Yes, Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question. I think there was one report where the applicant was almost asking us whether their expense was eligible. The one around insurance liability, and I read the report almost saying that we're keeping the money right now. We used it to pay for insurance, but we're not sure if that's right or not. So I wasn't sure if we needed to give direction. Looking at my notes, maybe Rodney?
The fair.
And it
Well, it
looked
wasn't
to me
a
like
fair.
there's a question mark in their report.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
I recall seeing that as well.
So I was wondering if staff needed direction from the committee to make an official position whether the liability insurance was in fact an eligible expense.
I guess it determines upon whether it's an event-related expense or whether it was a program or an organizational expense.
I'm just trying
Yeah, if it was increased insurance because they were holding a specific event,
Yeah.
I could understand it
Yeah.
being covered, but if it was just part of their regular insurance, then no.
They did the drive-through parade, I think.
Right.
An event to promote programs. Program to promote events.
Yeah, so is it our interpretation that this insurance was just for that event, at which point I think it would be fine?
Mhm.
Okay. So they might need correspondence back or just confirmation. But I'm okay with it.
Yes, it was the drive-through parade.
Okay.
We can follow up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Are we ready to then dispense with this item? If so, we have a motion that reads, be it resolved that the November 15th, 2021 report entitled Community Grant Program Final Report Summary submitted by the Manager of Administrative Services be received and filed for information, and that the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee provide, oh, that doesn't help. Wants to provide direction. How about, are you satisfied with the eligibility of the organizations that provided the or submitted final report? If the committee's fine with that, then we'll craft that second part of the motion that way.
I'm fine.
All right. Can you smith something out there for that, Catherine?
Absolutely. That the report be received and filed, and that the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee approve the eligibility of organizations for the 2022 Community Grant Program based on their submitted final reports.
Thank you. Substitute 3 words for 1. Anyone interested in moving that?
I'll move.
Councillor Jiguer?
I'll second.
Okay, Councillor Martin, thank you. All in favor? And I'm assuming Sally's in favor of that. Well, that's carried. So moving on then with the 2022 Community Grant Program allocations from the Chief Administrative Officer. Julie?
Catherine again. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This report, the recommendation is that the report be received and filed. And the purpose of the report is to review the chart provided, which is a summary of the 2022 Community Grant Program requests, and also to review the 2022 Community Grant Program evaluation forms, and to determine the next steps, including a timeline for the development of a report for Elgin County Council's consideration. So the report does have a bit of a background of our different community grant program streams, the community services, the festival and events, and then of course, the cultivate and seed. And then the chart is a chart for all the grant packages that you received yesterday, just summarizing everyone who's applied, how much they've applied for, and totals, and also includes totals, request totals for 2021, and then also allocations for 2021, and then whether the final report was received. Not applicable just indicates that either they did not apply or it was not applicable because they returned the funds because the event did not happen. I just want to note there is a discrepancy between the amounts that were oversubscribed in the report and in the chart. I had received some updated numbers from finance and neglected to change in the actual report. So the number that we are oversubscribed is actually $44,699.50. This year, we received a request for $114,252. I'm tongue-tied. In total, in all of the streams, which is just a little over $3,000 more than we received and asked for last year. And as stated before, we are $44,699.50 oversubscribed. It is a very similar ask to last year. And the staff would like the committee to recommend a date for having the grant packages scored. We did recommend December 15th so that there could be some turnaround, getting a report ready for a RIPA meeting in the early new year, so that your recommendations can go to County Council early in the new year as well. I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So just to understand, you would like, you're suggesting that the scorings be received back to staff by the 15th of December?
Yes.
And then you will, of course, work on those and then get back to, are you suggesting that it would follow with a RIPA committee meeting prior to council in January?
Yes.
Okay. What's your
The
thought?
only thing
Yep.
that's fine with me, Ed. The only thing I would say is each year we've agreed that the 4-H are going to get their full amount. It's not a large amount. And we've agreed that the plowmans would get theirs. It's a very small amount that they asked for. And we weren't going to, because the other is a percentage. We work out, figures in a percentage. I'm wondering if we need to be evaluating those two every year when we have already agreed on that the last couple of years. Plus, I know the seniors picnic in the park, they're asking more this year. They're going from 1,500 to 2,500. So we'll probably have to evaluate that one. But last time we agreed on those three, that we would just fully fund them. And then, of course, the picnic didn't happen. But I just don't want to spend a long time evaluating something if we're just going to say, no, we're going to do that anyway. So at full. So I'm happy to evaluate all the others, but I just wondered about that.
Well, it's a good suggestion, Sally. What's the thoughts of the committee? Are you comfortable with just saying yes to 4-H and yes to the plowmans, as is, Tom?
What's the difference then of just making them a line item on the budget?
Yeah.
If they're tried,
We've
if they're tried and true.
that before.
All right, where would you take it from? Would you simply say, yep, it's a line item and we're going to subtract it from the grants program? Or where else are you going to put it in the budget?
Can they be still accountable? You go ahead and give it to them, but there has to be follow-up and accountability.
I would agree with that, but I'm saying just from an allocation of the funding, I think it still needs to be part of the grants program. Do you not?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would say that's a very slippery slope and a huge departure to switch any of our organizations that we've been supporting to line items. So I think if that's something we want to discuss another day, but I would say my recommendation, and I completely hear you, Sally, it almost feels irrelevant, like the scoring, but I think we can do it fairly quickly. I think everybody submitted an application. I think we treat everybody the same. Everybody deserves a score, and then we'll use the score to deliberate. To me, it just means that some evaluations should be quicker than others. If, we've evaluated them before and there's no significant change in their programming. But any differentiation at this point, I would not advise.
The only thing I would say, Ed, in response is that I agree with that, and I agree with scoring, et cetera. That's fine. The problem was when we score, we don't have enough money for all the money requested, and therefore then we allocate the money according to their score based on the total scores and percentages and all that. But we ignored that with the plowmans and the 4-H and just went ahead and gave them everything and took them out of that equation. And then the money that was left over after we did that, then we did all the others in accordance with that. So that's all. I'm just saying, it seems too bad that we go through with that whole process and then we just decide to change it when it's time to allocate the money anyway. So
That's true, because then differentiation is happening, but after the fact, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, please.
because I'll be doing the calculations for the grant. So maybe I'll just do 2 scenarios so that we're prepared in that meeting. One that does reflect Sally's wishes, and then the other that does include them with the rest with the normal calculations.
thank you.
I think that's fair.
I agree.
And is it just restricted to the 2 organizations, Plowman and 4-H?
Well, as had been pointed out, the picnic in the park was one that was included last year. But as Sally has pointed out, the ask is a lot more this year, and thinking that it might need to be adjudicated properly. It seems to me from a principal point of view, I don't think the program has changed, but probably their expenditures have. So I think if we're going to follow Dominique's advice, then we need to adjudicate it properly as well.
And I think part of the larger ask might be they were unable to hold this year and they were trying to expand it, I believe. So yes, I agree with adjudicating it this time.
Okay. Okay, so the other pieces of this particular report to do, it includes the return of the, I guess you could say, the adjudication papers back to staff by the 15th of December. Is that agreed? Just what you want to do before Christmas.
I have a request, if possible. Could IT staff make this a fillable form?
We could certainly, it is a fillable form or Excel
Yeah.
preferred.
I think we have an Excel.
Application packages, the matrix is fillable form.
So if I want to score this package, score your packages, can I do it online? That's what I want to do. Okay,
We can walk you through it after the.
okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so then the plan is, again, to have these, your scorings into the staff by the 15th of December. The follow-up meeting in early January. Does that sound about right?
Does to me.
Okay,
Would you like to try to identify a date now, Mr. Chairman?
well, that's
Well, everyone's
date of
out.
next meeting, I assume that's what you're getting at, is it not?
Yes.
Okay, we can deal with that down there. I was just trying to put this number 7 all together here. Shall we dispense with the, is there anything else that needs to be included within that motion then for number 7, other than just to be received?
No.
Okay. Are we ready to move on that? That's simply just to receive this report?
Yes.
If so, I'd entertain a mover and seconder. Moved by Warden Marks. Second by
second.
Councillor Jiguer. That the report be received. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And I note on my agenda that there is no correspondence for today. I also note that there is no new business unless someone has some. So now then we'll tackle the date of the next meeting. So what is staff recommending in order to keep the process in line with the budget?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if we do want this to be considered by council at their meeting on January 11th, we will need to meet in advance of January 6th. So I'm suggesting perhaps either the 5th of January, although that is the first day back from the holiday, or the 6th.
Thought we canceled holidays.
Yeah. What is the committee's pleasure? I assume that's either a
Either
Monday or a
day.
Tuesday.
No, it's a Wednesday.
That's a
or
Wednesday, the
Thursday.
It's a Wednesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
Wednesday or Thursday.
Tuesday is the,
Oh,
Tuesday's the 4th.
oh,
Yeah.
you're correct. I apologize.
I'm
Either
good.
the Tuesday or the Wednesday would be best.
4th or 5th works for me.
Yep.
Yes, 4th or 5th.
They're
At
fine
this
with me.
So you're saying the 3rd's a holiday?
Yeah, in lieu
I
of,
believe it
because
is.
they have, January 1st is on a weekend.
That's fantastic. I got a holiday for a birthday.
I would be in favor of the 5th if I'm
Okay.
in the morning, if I may.
Okay, right now my calendar is open as far as I can tell, since I left it at home. January 5th sounds good.
What time?
9?
9?
I think that might be prudent. Depends on how long we're going to argue over these applications.
I've been known to get up that early a couple of times.
Well, okay, you don't want to stress you. All right, then we will meet again then January the 5th in the new year at 9 a.m. Is there anything else before this committee today?
Move adjournment?
That sounds like I hear a movement there. Who's willing to second that?
I'll second it.
We'll take Martin for that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I have 2:09 on the clock here, so that's what I'm gonna record. That the meeting be adjourned at 2:09. And I think everybody's, well, we're good.
You're on a good
Pretty
meeting,
good,
Mr.
ladies and gentlemen.
Chairman.
I mean, there was a lot of material to cover and you got through it in fairly quick order, so congratulations on that.